board chairman of the Ghana Audit Service, Professor Edward Duajiman, has described allegations of procurement breaches by Auditor General Daniel Domilovo as untrue. Mr. Domilovo petitioned the president, claiming the board chair is seeking to take over procurement procedures and is directing staff at the service without due regard to him as the head of the service. But Professor Duajiman tells JoyNews' Daniel Dazi these claims are untrue.
We have had a meeting with him, and we have explained that it's never true. At a board meeting, he brought it up. The board members said he has never even mentioned this to us, so it's never true.
So you did not stop any company from submitting a proposal?
No. It never happened.
In the petition, he says you responded and you admitted this action, but he said the chairman admitted to the offense with the excuse that the law did not exist during his tenure of office as Auditor General, and so you did not know that you were not allowed to do this.
No. That he quoted it. He quoted me out of context at the meeting, at the board meeting. I explained to him that wasn't the case, and that what he was doing was not the right thing. And all the board members said if he had such an issue, he would have brought it to the attention of the board. He never brought this up, so they didn't know what was happening, and therefore there was no truth in that.
You said what he was doing was not the right thing. What was he doing?
Just traveling without telling us, and then insisting that as far as he's concerned, he is not answerable to the board. And we thought that was wrong.
Well, clearly there seems to be a problem, and Dr. Kojo Asante is Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement with the CDD, and Beauty Emefanati, Executive Secretary of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. They're here for us to talk about this matter. For some people, it may look like, oh, what's the big deal? But tell us why this is an important issue we should be looking at.
It's a really big deal. I think I don't recall any Auditor General who in such a short period has proven to be a big sort of servant of the Constitution. He's understood his responsibilities. The number of audits, trying to make sure audits are done on time, forensic audits are done, going after to make sure that people are held accountable. I think all we have to do is to make sure that he is supported to do his work. This is a very serious issue because it goes to a violation of the Constitution. Even just take a normal auditor. If KPMG is auditing you, you can't go and be interfering in KPMG, otherwise they will not sign off. So just the profession, auditing, it needs independence. So to the extent that if you have a board where the board is actually trying to interfere with the functions of the Auditor General, which is to audit public accounts, that is a violation of the Constitution. So that one, for me, there's not even a contestation. The Constitution is very clear. And let me make one point. The Constitution is so clear that the only instance where even somebody can request for additional audits to be made outside of what is set in the Constitution, the President has to do it in consultation with the Council of State and in pursuit of the public interest. So it's very, very specific. So any kinds of actions that seeks to interfere with the functions of the Auditor General, it's a no-no.
Let me come to you, ma'am, because we just had Professor Duajiman make some claims about the Auditor General traveling. And do you think they're legitimate? Do you think he has a point there?
Well, the Constitution is very clear. When you look at Article 187, it's clear on the functions of the Auditor General and clearly has given him power. What we heard a professor talk about, I would describe as very administrative. It is more at managerial level. Per our corporate governance laws, we don't expect a CEO to take permission from the board for travel. If you look at the corporate governance law, this is not something that you would expect from a CEO. He may inform them as a kind of a formality, but it's not required or mandated. And also, we also have to look at the institution we are talking about, it's not just any corporate organization. This is audit service, and it has some powers in terms of how it's supposed to run as a service. The president has a key priority when it comes to the audit service. So there should be some level of independence for the auditors general. And for me, one thing that highlights or that comes to mind in terms of the issue now is that we have a president that has committed to fighting corruption. And we also have an Auditor General who is also out there doing his best to promote that fight against corruption and also abuse of public resources. And for the first time, we have the Auditor General has been able to put in measure with the support of civil society to be able to do this surcharging, which was not done previously.
And I was just about to...
And that even goes back to the presidency, who is seeking to have Ghana go beyond aid. So if we are looking at Ghana going beyond aid, obviously it means that we need to see how the resources are managed. We need to prevent abuse of the resources and also see that value for money is always applied.
I was just going to talk about the fact that for you at the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition and CDD, you've worked with some of the works of the current Auditor General, Daniel Domilovo, and how his expose has helped to, see some corrupt deeds of government officials. But here's an interesting twist to all of this, is that the current board chair was a former Auditor General, and looking at the achievements of this current Auditor General and all the praises, I mean, basically looking at the whole structure of a former Auditor General being made the board chair of another, what do you make of that?
I think that itself was probably a mistake because it creates, I mean, you would say because he's been a former Auditor General, he understands the institution. But then it depends on the individual. If the individual is going to use that experience and, in a negative way, then it can be, as we have seen, it can create problems. But I think, for me, I'm actually quite disappointed that this is happening with Professor JoyNews, because I think that you have to credit him with where the audit service is now.
Okay.
If you remember, when he came in the early 2000s, for a long time, we had a huge arrears, and he started reducing the arrears. So he's credited with a lot of the reforms at the audit service. So I'm a bit surprised that, some of the things he's saying, I don't think is justifiable. He, as Auditor General, would not have allowed that. You cannot be having audit meetings. It's just, even as a professional, as I said, professional job, as an auditor, that itself is not good, let alone an Auditor General. So I really think that if they are going to work together, he has to understand his limits within the law. There's a role for the board, in terms of policy.
Yes.
And even there are questions about, when you are going to do procurement, you don't inform us. I mean, if the board of multimedia approves budgets for procuring cameras or whatever it is, they are not going to go and sit with the board and look at the specs and whatever before they go and procure. Once the board has given approval for the budget, whatever procurement committee is there does its work, and it goes on.
All right, so briefly, let me find out from the two of you. Let me start with you and I'll end with him. What do you think we should be doing now about this situation before it spirals out of control?
Okay, so the first thing is that it's a very worrying situation, even for the image of the Ghana Audit Service, because clearly when you have people who are being audited, and then there's that signal that things are not going well with the audit service, it's also, in a way, gives people the impression that they can take advantage of the system, which is not a good signal for us as a nation. So I believe that the earlier this is addressed, the better. And we also wish the president will act quickly on this and then make whatever findings public for everyone to know. This notwithstanding, we are not saying or condoning that if the Auditor General is not, following
the Constitution and the law.
But what we are saying is that everything should be done per the Constitution. That is the law. The law should be the key guiding factor in this whole dialogue. And then we also believe that it is important for the board chair and the Auditor General to settle their differences, because I believe, as Kojo rightly talked about, the professor has the interest of Ghana, and I don't think that he is willing to see Ghana go back in terms of the role that the Auditor General has played.
But Doc, do you think it's realistic for the two of them to still work together after this public display?
Well, I think you know, even from Dia Jiman's own statements, he thinks that it still can be resolved. He thinks the interpretation of the Constitution gives him and the board some powers. I think that that is not a right interpretation. So hopefully the president's probe, you know, can bring this to there's some clarity on where the line should be drawn in terms of the board's oversight over the audit service.
Thank you so much for making time this morning to speak to us. And that's the conversation on what's happening currently at the audit service. You're watching News Desk with me, Bernice Abubeid. We'll be back with more.